With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight live here in the Bourbon Life Studios, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing out there, buddy?
Mark, I am doing great out here. How are you in there?
I'm doing good. Well, it looks like you're recovering nicely, man, from your big bike wreck a couple of weeks ago. So you're back in action, man. Stitches are out. You're up and walking around. You're doing good. Looks like you're feeling all right.
I'm still back on two legs, so happy to be there.
Well, that's good, Matt. We're happy you're back with us, man, and glad you're feeling better. No doubt about that one. We got a great show lined up tonight, man. I'm really excited about this one. I met our guest last year down in Townsend, Tennessee, at a festival, and had talked to him a little bit off and on since then. So happy to finally get this lined out and get him on the show with us, man. So this is going to be a lot of fun. With that said, though, I do need to thank all of our sponsors. We appreciate everything they do for us. We couldn't do the show without their help and their support. So thank you to all of our sponsors for everything that you do for us. Matt, with that said, man, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
I would love to. Joining us this morning, this evening, this afternoon, whenever it is you are listening to the Bourbon Life Podcast, is the Master Distiller and founder at Company Distilling, Jeff Arnett. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate that very much. You know, Jeff, at first when we jumped on, I saw you wearing this kind of a light blue shirt, and I thought, man, he's got Kentucky gear on. This is got
on the company gear.
Got the company gear on. Yeah, that makes more sense than UK gear for a Tennessee guy, especially, man. So, but Jeff, like I was saying before we started the show, that you and I actually got a chance to meet you down at Grains and Grits down in Townsend, Tennessee, which is a really cool festival. If people haven't been to it, down in Southeast Tennessee, right outside of Gatlinburg, little town, Townsend, Tennessee. It's a really neat little place and a really cool little festival down there. So got the chance to meet you down there last fall and have been talking back and forth a little bit, and finally just excited to get you on the show, man. So it's great to have you here with us tonight.
Yeah, it's good to be with you guys. It's kind of actually a really good time because I'm just now getting all the products that I had kind of envisioned into our portfolio. Not that I'm completely done, but there were three that I wanted to have that I felt like would create a little bit of at least a meaningful flight for us. And I'm finally arriving at that. So that's excellent timing from my standpoint.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad we got it timed just right. It sounds like, that's timing's everything, right? So,
oh yeah.
Well, Jeff, I tell you what, if you want to, we usually like to let our guests, especially since this is your stuff, like to tell our listeners what we're going to be drinking in this first round. Matt, you've got a bottle there you can hold up as well while he's telling everybody what it is.
Yep. So this is called the Tennessee Three Wood. I call it the Tennessee Three Wood because it is a proper Tennessee whiskey, which means that it's been through hard sugar maple charcoal filtration right after distillation and before it was matured in a barrel. It has been in a charred oak barrel. Of course, the next step that's required to be a bourbon. I often tell people that Tennessee whiskeys are just a special style of bourbon that have been mellowed, but in every other regard, they are a bourbon. But in this case, just because of the essence of the liquid and what I was looking to do with it, I chose to do a toasted applewood as a finishing thing on it. So it's all natural. It is basically, it's water, grains, yeast, and then the three woods that I mentioned. It's maple, it's oak, and it's apple. I did it at 86.5 proof. I just thought it'd be fun. I was thinking about a proof point. I didn't want to go as low as 80, but I wanted something below 90, which is where our flagship bourbon is. And 865, if you type VOL, VOL on your phone, you'll type 865. And it's also the area code for East Tennessee where Townsend's located. So I just
right.
felt like there were a lot of reasons why 86.5 would be a fun proof point for it. And it was our first Tennessee whiskey product.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, as a lifelong Kentuckian, man, I'll just pass over the whole vol thing. We won't even get into that. Okay. But the 865, that did not even occur to me. My wife and I go down to Gatlinburg probably 3 or 4 times a year. So as soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. So Jeff, really, on this product, so you got the maple, the Lincoln County process, basically, right? Can you explain that just real quick? So most people probably know what it is, but it'd be good.
Yeah. So obviously made famous by my old brand of Jack Daniel's, the torchbearer of Tennessee whiskey for the longest time. If you go back historically, Tennessee made whiskey slightly differently than they did in Kentucky. They followed similar grain bills because of the availability of grain. Was pretty common between Tennessee and Kentucky. They were maturing in very similar environments as far as 4 seasons, warm summers, cold winters. They were using new barrels. Those seemed to prevail in both Tennessee and Kentucky. But there was a thing called the Lincoln County process, which actually Jack Daniel's Lynchburg is located in Moore County. But back in the 1860s, Moore County did not exist. So there were fewer counties in the state of Tennessee. So it was a part of Lincoln County. There was a law passed in 1870, I think it was, that said if there was any community that was more than a day's ride by horseback to the closest courthouse, that they were going to create a new courthouse and create a new county. So that added Moore County into the counties of Tennessee. So there are 95 counties in the state of Tennessee now. But that last round was, I guess, in the 1870s when they were trying to conduct business at courthouses and trying to connect communities so that it wasn't too far. But yeah, the Lincoln County process basically, who knows exactly how and why it was done. If it was some type of a purification thing that people used on water and they thought it improved the whiskey, but it was something that kind of stuck in Lincoln County in particular, where they would drip the new distillate off the still through, where Jack Daniel's is concerned, 10 feet of hard sugar maple charcoal. And I'm not sure that there's any particular amount that's right. What I have seen of charcoal is that charcoal kind of has a life expectancy. It kind of absorbs things. It also imparts things. So it kind of is a subtractive, but also a slightly additive process. It neutralizes pH. It removes fatty acids. It kind of cleans up the mouthfeel, removes bitterness from the distillate. But there's a point at which the charcoal will quit working. And what I've told people is I felt like the 10-foot depth gave the vat life.
Okay.
So what I imagine is that when a new vat goes into service, a lot of what happens to the whiskey when it comes into the charcoal mellowing vat happens right at the surface, but eventually that charcoal will begin to saturate and kind of pull in what it can hold. And so the whiskey works its way deeper and deeper through the vat. So you just want to change it out before you hit the bottom.
Yeah.
So for Jack Daniel's, that was about every 6 months or so. The charcoal would be changed, but definitely when I saw it, it definitely changes the distillate.
Okay.
I think Tennessee whiskeys tend to vary from Kentucky bourbons in 2 ways. One of them is charcoal mellowing, but the other one is usually a little bit less rye is included in the grain bill.
Right.
So if you think about the oldest of the Tennessee whiskeys, both Jack Daniel and George Dickel had a 8, 9, 10%. Rye content, where most of your bourbons would be 2 to 3 times higher than that, sometimes 4 times higher in rye content, which adds pepper and spice. Corn adds sweetness. So Tennessee whiskeys tend to be a little bit on the sweeter side of the spectrum for sure.
Yeah.
But I came across this one and I felt like the character was nice on it. It was just really soft and easy, but it needed something. If I'm being honest, it just kind of needed something to kind of create an identity for it. So the Applewood, I thought, really did well on it. The consumer response, I've not been able to submit this for any judging or awards yet, but the consumer response on it has been really strong.
Okay.
People absolutely love it.
Great. And this one's coming in at, I think, 42 months, I think is what my note says. Matt, I think it's on the...
It is.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned is that if you do a finishing step correctly, it kind of will take some of the backside heat off of the alcohol. So it kind of maybe accomplishes some of those things that you're going to get if you just stay in the oak barrel a little bit longer, but you accelerate that. And there's only so much oak I want on the distillate when I'm wanting the finishing wood to have a presence too. So to this point, I'm not really trying to go with 10 and 15-year-old whiskeys to finish, because to be honest, they're already finished. They finish pretty strong.
Right.
If they've been in an oak barrel for that long. So I need something to be a good candidate for finishing. It needs to be on the little bit younger side of the spectrum.
Gotcha. Now with the apple wood, is that just staves, or are you like vatting and then putting staves in that, or how does that process work with that?
Yeah, so our whole finishing process is based on a couple of years of work that I did at Jack Daniel's. We had a product called the number 27 Gold that we were doing a double barreling on, and the second barrel was a toasted maple wood barrel.
Okay.
And I love the flavor of that product. And what I learned is that toasted maple was a great idea, but making a maple barrel was a really bad idea. They just don't hold liquid very well. They're not like oak. Even though they're a hardwood, they just don't have the same ability to retain liquid, so they tend to bleed. So if you would take a 20 to 25% angel share in an oak barrel over 4 or 5 year period, you would drop that back into a maple barrel for 5 or 6 months and then lose that again.
Wow. Okay.
So you would lose as much in a half a year as you would in 5 in an oak barrel. So the 27 Gold product, even though I really liked it from a character standpoint, it was not sustainable and it was very expensive to make. And there was a constant going back and forth with the brand team of, should we keep the product or should we kill it? And and the product was not even made for America. It was made for Asia Pacific, where they told me 80 proof was the ceiling because the Asian consumer, at least at the time, had a sort of a lower tolerance for proof than maybe the rest of the globe. Especially, I think in America, 90 proofs, probably a little bit more of a expected proof on a bourbon or a whiskey, where 80 in that market was already, they were going to put tonic in it or something,
Right.
Even at that proof. So I set out to fix that. I just, wanted to keep the maple wood involved, but had to figure out, is there a way to finish that mimics a double barreling? Can I get a sensory match by doing an altered process? So I spent a couple of years, actually dialed the proof all the way up to 100 on it, was able to get a product that from a sensory standpoint, if I put it into, in front of an expert panel of tasters who knew Jack Daniel's really well, they couldn't tell the difference. So I felt like I had fixed it, but at the same time, they were saying they wanted to kill the product anyway. So this was at a time that I was considering starting my own brand anyway. Yeah. I really enjoyed doing the wood finishing work and studying it, and decided that, you could probably build a brand off of that, because beyond, doing wine barrel finishes and, and some things with French oak and things of that nature, there's not been a whole lot done in the wood finishing outside of, just a couple of woods. And I really wanted to dive into that a little bit deeper.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So this mimics as if it's been in an apple barrel, but obviously building an apple wood barrel would not be a smart idea. But as long as I get the flavor, then I'm good with it.
Okay. Yeah, great. Speaking of flavor, Matt, let's talk about the nose on this. What do you pick up in terms of the nose on it?
The first thing I picked up on the nose was a real sweet, strong aroma of kettle corn.
Okay.
Right from the start. Just a really nice, inviting kettle corn. And now as it's sitting in the glass and it's had some time to open up and sit out, I think that apple influence is really strong. I pick up a lot of the apple, a lot of cinnamon, some cereal grains. It kind of smells a lot like apple cinnamon Cheerios.
Apple Jacks, man.
Cereal.
Apple Jacks.
Yeah. It has that, that kind of aroma, without any like off-putting sweetness, or
right.
It's just really nice, like really crisp, really nice nose to it. I really enjoy this.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. That was the first thing when I started nosing it. I let it set for a few minutes, obviously, as we've been talking, and it just
of course, I've been trying to do this starting off in small scale quantities, trying to figure out exactly what is the right amount of time and
right.
The finishing process, because it may be altered a little bit from maple to cherry to apple. The ones that we've worked with so far, that may be slightly different to get to the, to accomplish what you're trying to. This one actually smelled like a box of raisins to me when it was unprocessed, when it was just the unfiltered spirit. That is a little bit subdued, but I would almost say it's more like an apple raisin salad
nice.
On the nose. To me, I can still catch, because it was so strong in the process sample, I think I catch a little bit of it. It's almost like a faint faint raisin note.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. But as it opened up to me, it was like, the cinnamon's coming through.
Apple's there, though.
Apple is definitely there, which, sometimes when you think, okay, it's going to be finished in a particular type of wood, you start thinking, okay, I should pick up those notes. And then you're like, no, you're not going to get apple off of that. But this one, I'm like, I'm really smelling apple, and I don't think it's just in my mind. I don't think I'm making that up. I really smell it. Very, very cool. So Jeff, let's talk about you. You kind of alluded to obviously what you'd done in the past, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about your background, where you're from. What you did obviously before, because you worked for a very, 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 very big distillery, and now you're doing your own thing. So can you kind of talk about that natural progression from where you started and where you are now?
Okay. So, coming out of college, I didn't really intend to work at a distillery. I grew up in West Tennessee, about halfway between Memphis and Nashville, and there were no distilleries in my, I had a pretty small world at that time. I had not traveled much outside of West Tennessee. But I never really thought about that as a career choice. I wanted to work in the automotive field. I had an engineering degree from college, couldn't find work in the automotive field. The biggest industrial plant in my hometown was owned by Procter & Gamble. They made Duncan Hines cake mixes and frostings and also Pringles potato chips there.
Okay.
So it was a massive facility. I mean, they operated their own switch crew. It was about 40 acres under roof, had about 1,300 employees. I mean, it was a massive facility. And I didn't really know anybody who worked there. I had some friends maybe whose parents did, but they had a great reputation in town as being a good company to work for. So I decided to send a resume to them, and they told me they weren't going to hire at the Jackson plant as I was graduating, but they did have a couple of openings at the Folger Coffee Company in New Orleans. I drove down and took an interview there. I lived in Slidell. So for people who know Louisiana, I lived on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain. I drove across the Twin Spans every morning for 4.5 years and made coffee. The New Orleans plant was one of 4 at the time. It got reduced down to 3 when they shut down in San Francisco, but it did all the classing and grading of coffee beans for that brand because it was strategically located off the, not too far from the Gulf of Mexico. And a lot of the coffee is going to be grown in Central and South America. So they could just bring it up through the Gulf. It would enter into the Port of New Orleans. You had a company called Port Cargo Services that was a commodities broker on beans. So we could send somebody across town, 15, 20-minute drive and be back at the plant with a pound or two of all these different variety of beans that were going to be imported into the country. And then we would roast, grind, and brew them individually and then go through a classing and grading process, thinking about flavor, acidity, body, all these different attributes of the bean that you would want to consider as you were thinking about them going into a blend. And hopefully by blending, making them better together than they were individually. So you wanted to bring in beans that tasted good, but even if they were a little bit lighter on the palate, didn't have as much body or structure, you would throw in beans that just were bolder and a little bit more earthy, but you didn't want too many of them because it was like licking the bottom of a shoe. It was almost too earthy. So you would work them in small quantities, but kind of learning the arts of where flavors show up on the palate. Yeah. The time I spent in coffee was definitely worthwhile. To me, I was there 4.5 years. I moved to Sherman, Texas, which was an hour north of Dallas, to a sister coffee plant that also made juice drinks. And I was just out there for a couple of years because Procter & Gamble started to reshape the company. When I joined them, they were 20% food as far as their holdings and sales. By the time I left them, I was with them about 10 years. Pringles was the last brand they held. So they were selling them off in quick succession. So I ended up moving back to my hometown and made Pringles for about 4 years. And then it was announced that it would be sold. So I had to figure out quickly if I was going to be sold to another company, if I wanted to clean up a resume and try to take my career into my own hands. So not knowing where that might go, I just sent a resume into the Nashville area. Headhunter picked it up and lined me up for an interview at Jack Daniel's. And I was a big fan of Jack. I think being a native Tennessean and having lived out of the state of Tennessee for a while, you tell somebody you're from Tennessee and it's like Jack Daniel's. Yeah, right. It's like the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth. Sometimes it'd be Elvis or Dolly or something like that, but more often than not, it was Jack is what people knew of the state of Tennessee. So, but I was a Tennessee Squire. I was in the fan club of the brand.
Okay.
They needed a quality control manager, and this was back in 2001. So was fortunate enough to get an interview and get the job, and spent the next 7 years learning the whiskey making process, doing all the quality oversight, literally everything from cave spring water and grains through fermentation, distillation, mellowing into barrels, maturation, properties of, it was about 74 warehouses when I got there. It was about 95 when I left because the newest warehouses there will hold about 66,000 barrels apiece. So they're 3 times the size of the ones you see on the hill above the distillery in Lynchburg. But so they build much, much larger warehouses when they build them now. But I'd been with them about 5 years. They promoted me to take over all their processing and warehousing operations. That was when they first mentioned to me that they wanted to add me to a list of people that they would consider to replace Jimmy Bedford, who was the current serving master distiller at the time. He was only the 6th person in the history of the company, a company that was 140 years old, but he was only the 6th person that was named master distiller there. And then a couple of years later, when I'd been there about 7 years, almost to the day, they asked me if I would become Master Distiller. And I was honored to do that. So for the next 12 years, I was with them almost 20. I went to like 41 different countries.
Wow.
I tried to limit the travel as best I could. I was at the distillery about 80% of the time. I was on the road 20% of the time. So I would spend 50 to 60 days a year out on the road. It was a good time to be at Jack Daniel's. It was a good time to be in the industry because, Jack Daniel's had been a fairly sleepy brand. I think the whiskey bourbon industry had been a little bit sleepy for about 3 decades. But, the 6 master distillers that preceded me had created 3 products into the portfolio of Jack Daniel's. So there was the old number 7 Tennessee whiskey, there was Gentleman Jack, and there was Single Barrel, and that was it. By the time I left them, we were up to 11, and there was pretty much something planned for every single year after that. I left them with about a 5-year pipeline of new products to release, assuming that they'll go ahead and continue to do what we were discussing then. You have to plan those things years out, obviously.
Right.
I felt like, it had a great run there. If I thought about the things that I would do during the time that I was Master Distiller, I'd done a lot of them in that 10 or 11 year span because we'd just been so active. But I'd never really set out to change the Jack Daniel's brand, and put my fingerprints all over it. It was just that we felt like we needed to be putting out new products, just to remain relevant in the current market. So I kind of bred a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation, new grain bills, new barrel technologies, flavored spirits and stuff like that. Nothing seemed to be completely off the table, while I was there, but at the same time, I didn't own it. I was an employee of Jack Daniel's, and I began to realize that, I was in my 50s, and if I was ever going to make the move to build my own brand, my own distillery, I wasn't getting any younger. So I need to go ahead and think about doing it now. And I'd made some friends in the industry who were also interested in joining it. So once I felt like we had a complementary skill set of people, had some financial backing, it was time to go. So it was bittersweet, but, I left Jack Daniel's at the end of 2020 during the pandemic, not knowing how hard it was going to be to get just the most basic things done. Glassware labels and stuff, I think, were harder than the liquid was.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I was sitting on liquid waiting on bottles to show up. It was just crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. And we'll talk about that in the second round, because that was a question I actually had to ask you, was about starting that brand in the middle of the pandemic. So
why we named it company, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that too.
Yeah, that'd be great. So Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey, because we're almost at the end of round 1 here. So let's talk about the palate and the finish on this. So what are you picking up on this?
It's surprising for 86.5 proof, surprisingly warm right at the front of the palate. It's got a nice little kick of heat, little cinnamon, some of that corn, that high corn comes through. Then there's that crispness, that crisp aroma from the apple. Get like kind of tart apple, like a tart apple pie type characteristics. There's a sweetness, kind of a doughy crust type flavor as well. And just a good coating of the mouth finish. Nice heat across the top of the tongue that really stays with you. Just, this is a good sipping whiskey. Yeah,
I would agree with that, Matt. And that's, kind of surprised me because thinking in terms of low rye, with Tennessee whiskey, that I don't expect that spice, but it's not a big punch, but you still get that spicy tingle, that nice spice feeling on your tongue. And then that sweetness kind of kicks in as well. So it's a really nice combination. That cinnamon you talked about as well. A lot of nice flavors going on there.
Yeah. It's already starting to get a little bit warm here in Tennessee, and I've called this one sort of our summer sipping whiskey. It's the lowest proof. Yep. You can drop 1 ice cube on it, and it's amazing how easy it is just to sit and sip on it. And you kind of avoid getting that warming effect, where you kind of feel like it's hot outside and you don't really want to drink spirits because they're just going to make you warmer. I think this one kind of can overcome that a little bit. And that was intentional on my part. I wanted one of the things in our portfolio to kind of be on that end of the spectrum, where it would just be a soft sipper, easy. But 1 ice cube is about all it needs. And it breaks down really nice.
Yeah. And like Matt said, I mean, sometimes when you say an easy sipper, people are like, oh, what's that mean? Well, I mean, it is. It's an easy sipper. It's something you can enjoy. You still get those nice flavors, that corn sweetness. You get that rye, a little bit of that rye spiciness. You get the oak influence as well, that even the apple, like Matt said. Just a really nice combination, but it's very approachable. especially for someone, who's just getting into Tennessee whiskey. This would be probably a really, really good place to start for them as well. So no doubt about it. Very nice. Well, Jeff, we're at the end of round one. So let's take a quick break. Let's get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Jeff Arnett, the Master Distiller and founder of Company Distilling, in just a minute.
Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
From our good friends at The Stave comes Lexington's newest hotspot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social. All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me, still here live in the Bourbon Life studios, it's my good friend, Matt. And Matt, how you doing out there?
Mark, I'm doing great out here, and we are live. We're recording video again, right?
We are recording video.
We took
a couple weeks off just because technical issues. So
I kept having bad hair days.
That's what it was. It was all Matt's fault. Yeah. Matt kept picking his nose on video, so I couldn't do it.
Man, you can pick your nose, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your friends' nose.
Oh man! All right. Well, I do have to thank all of our sponsors, Matt. Of course, after that, we may lose them all. Who knows? But I do appreciate.
Are you kidding? If they've stuck with us this far,
yeah, they've heard a lot.
We can't shake them.
That's right, man. So we appreciate everything they do for us. We couldn't do the show without them. But with that said, Matt, do you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. For your listening pleasure this morning, this evening, this afternoon, so that it's not just Mark and I, we have a great guest for you all. He is the Master Distiller and founder at Company Distilling, Jeff Arnett. Jeff, welcome back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Yeah, good to be back.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you
getting back in the game.
Yeah. We appreciate you being here and joining us, man. Like I said before, I've been looking forward to this one and looking forward for quite a while to get you on the show especially after getting to meet you and talk to you in person a little bit down at Grains and Grits down there in Townsend. So looking forward to that. Before we jump back into the conversation though, would you like to tell everybody what we have poured up in this second round that we're going to be drinking?
Yeah. So this is our flagship bourbon product. So a lot of people were surprised in leaving Jack Daniel's that I didn't immediately come out with a Tennessee whiskey product. It was actually the third and sort of final in a way of the things that I had put into our portfolio. But I've always been enamored a little bit with wheated bourbon, not from a character standpoint per se, but the way the wheated bourbon brands in particular had somewhat created a quality halo around them as a subset. Most bourbons include rye. But a handful of them chose not to. They go with wheat. When you take rye out of the equation, take away the pepper spicy note, you bring in wheat. It's a softer grain. I say that the pro of doing that, the positive of it, is that it makes for an approachable spirit.
Okay.
And if there's a con to it, it's that maybe it's not going to be quite as flavorful or as interesting to some people. So there's sort of a downside to it as well. For my purposes, I wanted to explore wood finishes with Company. I had done a little bit of it, like I said, with the 27 Gold product at Jack Daniel's coming from a maple barrel. We had done some hickory. We had done some Jamaican allspice wood. We did some pecan. Mm-hmm. I was doing these small runs on the Tennessee Tasters line or Tennessee Distillery series, bottles that you would get only at the distillery. And it was interesting how I could take something that was as unchanging because, whether you love Jack Daniel's or not, it is very consistent. I mean, it was remarkably consistent year in, year out, day after day. But we could take something that was, as predictable as what Old Number 7 was going to be. And we could take barrel of it and put pecan in it, or we could put Jamaican allspice or pimento wood in it, or hickory. I could put hickory in it and make it taste like bacon. and just, it was kind of interesting because to me, it was more fun than doing honey or apple or cinnamon, putting flavored influences in like that, because it was working with a natural means. But what I envisioned for this flagship from company is, we were founded during the pandemic. That was actually what influenced the name company. When we were naming the company, was because, people's norms were to meet out at bars or restaurants with their friends, and everybody could look behind the bar. There would be, 50 or 60 bourbons back there. Everybody could order what they wanted. Restaurants were shut down. If you wanted to see someone, you were going to have to home entertain. So it was more common that you were going to have company coming over. If you couldn't afford to put 50 or 60 bottles in your cabinet at home, what were the 1, 2, 3 bottles that you might want to go and invest in, that would meet people wherever they are on their journey? Because what I wanted from this first offering from us was what I called approachable complexity. I wanted a bottle that if you were a new drinker, it wasn't going to overwhelm you. But if you were a fairly mature drinker, that there was going to be enough complexity, something to contemplate. So, flavorful, but not overwhelming at the same time. I thought wheat was a great candidate for it because simply I was looking for what I called a canvas that the maple wood could paint. And I knew the character of maple really well from having worked with it so much at Jack Daniel's on 27 Gold. So trying to find an underlying structure, this was not a single wheat for us. I actually wanted a 4-grain. That is to come. That'll happen next year. We should have it matured in, but this is the closest thing I could composite from 3 different liquids. So very similar to my time in coffee, where we would take different beans and put them together so that, they were better together than they were apart. I felt like I was able to do the same thing with these wheated bourbons. So there's actually 3 in it that came from 3 different states. The only thing they had in common was none of them had rye in their recipes. 2 of them were column distilled. 1 of them was pot distilled. A little trick that I learned from Woodford is that, their character is not solely pot. It's not solely column. It's a marriage of those 2 liquids because, column distillates can be thin. Pot distillates can be oily and heavy. And a lot of people would prefer some maybe in the middle of those 2. So I was able to control the mouthfeel. I feel like it has more structure than people were, kind of surprised on the mouthfeel. It tends to coat a little bit more than maybe they were expecting it to. But at 90 proof, maple wood, very prominent on the nose and on the flavor here. It composites at 30% wheat.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm going to change that to a 25% wheat next year with a 5% rye. Because I would have led with a 4-grain if it had just been something I could have gotten my hands on.
Yeah.
So when I did go and hand select grain and yeast and barrels and everything, that's what I went with. So that's what this will be. It'll still be a straight bourbon whiskey, but it'll be maple finished, but it'll be a 4-grain.
Okay.
Starting next year.
Great, Matt. What do you pick up on the nose on this one?
This nose is really complex. It's changed a couple different times for me already, but I first have to just kind of hold up it's got a really, really beautiful color to it.
Yeah, it does.
For 90 proof. Just a really, really nice, really pretty color. But the nose is, you were talking about on the Tennessee whiskey picking up raisins. I think I picked that up more here on this. It's got like a dark raisin or plum, maybe even like fig aroma to it. And then just really rich flavors. There's like a smokiness, almost like a sandalwood type aroma in there as well. I think there's like some like sweet richness that I just can't like put my finger on it, as well as to what I smell, but it really complex. And I really, really like this. Like it keeps me coming back because it's changing so much. It's really lovely.
Yep, Matt.
But I think it drinks well, and clearly I want it to drink below 90 proof. I don't want to overwhelm people. And I think it does that. I think it does. It doesn't sting or bite. It just has a warm, it has warm mouthfeel, warm when you swallow it, but doesn't really burn. You don't feel like you've taken the enamel off your teeth, because I've had some that made me feel that way, like it's gasoline. And our cast strength version of this actually just won a double platinum at the Ascot at 121 proof. Wow. It's very impressive at that high proof point.
That's awesome.
But yeah, for me, this very much hit the mark of what I had hoped for. And I was having to write, descriptors of the product even before I had it done. But it's like, if we're successful, these things would be true. of it. And I wasn't necessarily speaking to character of cinnamon or apple or raisin or figs or anything like that. I think I've said this was almost like a fig Newton as well. So I get the fig for sure. But I think some of the things that people have said to me that kind of surprised them is that I have a 3-year minimum age statement on the back. The liquid that you're tasting is running 5 to 6.
Okay.
The youngest barrels in it were 5. The oldest ones are pushing 6. So it's a much older, more mature spirit than I think a lot of people expected. But once again, we were in a pandemic. I acquired some barrels that were under 4 years old. Legally felt like I needed to have an age statement to cover me, just in case. Not sure when we'll bottle. But it is a much more mature spirit than I think people recognize or think. Because the compliment they'll give me is that it's really good considering how young it is, and I'm like, well, it's because it's not as young as that is, but thank you, but it's not. It doesn't taste young because it's not young,
right?
But the bottles are labeled, and I'm not changing the label now. So I'm going with what I got. And I'll just explain that to everyone. Just taste it. Let me know what you think. That's usually what I'll tell them. Don't read too much into the label.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because when Matt was pointing out the color, and I nosed it, and I've had a couple sips, but we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But just the color and the nose, and I'm looking at my notes, and it said minimum 3 years, and I'm like, there's no way. I mean, this has got to be older.
You are correct.
Okay,
yeah, it's a lot older than that. Yeah. It's almost twice that.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say that's some incredible finishing with maple wood. Yeah. If it's taking a 3-year-old,
but once again, I will reinforce it. I'm better off to not go with really old spirits,
right?
And then try to put the finishing wood on top of that. Once the oak is really kind of dominating, you don't want to conflict with that.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to catch stuff as it's sort of in that upswing.
Okay.
Where it's somewhat gotten settled in the oak, but hasn't been completely overwritten by it. It still has some of its inherent grain, notes remaining. And then I can just try to complement that with wood, because not every wood works with every distillate type. That was one of the things that I studied when I first left Jack Daniel's. I tried not to do anything towards company until I had already, gotten out the door at Jack Daniel's. I did not have a non-compete, but I didn't want to be running parallel paths, and it just wasn't right. So I didn't do anything meaningful towards company until I left. But as soon as I left, I immediately went out and started buying stuff off the shelf that I knew the grain bills on, so stuff that was really high in corn, stuff that was really high in rye. And I started like a wood matrix of finishing on it, trying to figure out which grain bills, are complementary, to which woods. Right. Yeah, because it's not a one size fits all by any means. There was a reason why I put the cherry wood on the rye, and it was because the higher the rye content, the more the cherry seemed to be the one.
Okay. And
it just was directionally always true, and it didn't really matter which rye it was, if it was a high rye bourbon or if it was a rye whiskey. But that was sort of one of the first studies that I did to just kind of get some lay of the land, if you will, which, what woods can I get my hands on, which ones can I toast, which ones, would be appropriate to do the finishing process. And then you just go from there.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yep. So Jeff, we talked about a little bit, you talked about starting during a pandemic, but let's just talk about the actual formation, how this all kind of came about. You got a great group of people. You mentioned that as well. So can you kind of talk about the process, how you guys all came together, got this idea, you formulated it, and then you launched this brand just at the beginning of COVID. But kind of talk about that, if you would.
Yeah. I've been with Jack Daniel's almost 20 years. And like I said, I felt like I'd had a good run there. I had an assistant distiller, Chris Fletcher, who was very capable, that, hate to say it, but he was probably wondering, when I was going to croak, or, if a beer truck would ever hit me so they could take the assistant off the front of his name. And I certainly thought that he was ready. He was younger than me. I was 41 when I became the master distiller there. He was in his late 30s, but he had a lot more industry experience than I did at that point too. So I felt like he was ready. He had been with me for 6 years since he was with Brown-Forman in R&D.
Okay.
He spent some time at Buffalo Trace as their head chemist for 3 years. I brought him back to Jack Daniel's to be my assistant with the intention that he would always be the next master distiller. And his grandfather, Frank Bobo, was the distiller before Jimmy Bedford. So he was a legacy candidate who grew up in Lynchburg. And I was the first distiller that wasn't born in Lynchburg or the shadows of the distillery. So, even as a native Tennessean, I would say I was largely an outsider to be in that role, because most, if not every distiller before me at Jack Daniel's, was family or grew up there.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I served as the vice president of the Tennessee Distillers Guild. So, I remember when there was only 2 distilleries in Tennessee, and then all of a sudden Pritchard's, came in Lincoln County in, I think, late 90s. And then next thing you know, the laws started changing where they were going to allow distilling in more than just 3 counties that were, written in after Prohibition that were going to allow it. And all of a sudden it became like 75 or 80 counties were all eligible to have distilleries in it. So you saw this, this explosion of distilleries happening across Tennessee, and most of them didn't go after whiskey first. Obviously, that's the longer play.
Right.
You got to, have the deep pockets to get barrels and mature it if you're going to do that. So you had a lot of like gin and vodka and moonshine, flavored moonshine, a lot of Appalachia mason jar type stuff going on. But I had gotten to know Chris Tatum. He was the president of the Tennessee Distillers Guild. He had helped build. He had a construction company, or worked in a construction company that had built several of the distilleries over in East Tennessee. They built Old Forge there at the Old Mill, Pigeon Forge, that he was a partner in. He and I become very good friends, and we've been very successful leading the Tennessee Distillers Guild, being part of the board there. Went after old, like 1930s era laws in the state of Tennessee that were written right after Prohibition that were very prohibitive, made it very difficult, I think, to succeed in the distilling business in Tennessee, where we felt like it just needs to be updated, a little bit more. We didn't want anybody to be reckless, but it certainly needed to be a little bit more progressive and friendly from a business standpoint. So we got about 11 laws changed or written as members of the guild, had a very successful run there and developed a friendship through it. And he was one of the people that I called and confided in, that I'm like, you're going to think I'm crazy to leave Jack Daniel's, because, Brown Forman had put in every press release that mentioned me ever that I was the luckiest guy on the planet to have that job. And they had started to believe it. And I guess I was believing it too. But, there was something in me that just I wanted to do my own thing. And I was going to regret not having taken the shot when it presented itself. So Chris told me he was ready to start again. We had another friend that was on the board. We had made friends with Kevin Clayton, who had made some investments in the Townsend area. He's CEO of Clayton Homes. His father and uncle had built that the largest factory built home company in the country now. But he was looking to make some investments in Townsend and sort of had a vision of what he wanted. He owned a campground there. He was building a mountain biking park, and he's sort of getting later in his career with Clayton, and he's wanting to line up some businesses that he'll have fun.
Yeah, sure.
As much as housing is a necessity and a need and everything like that, I don't think Kevin thinks it's as fun as whiskey is. So he's super excited, to be the founder of this brand as much as we are. So, but you had all these people coming together. Kevin Smith came with me from Jack Daniel's. He was the microbiologist there, just uber talented. I call him the wicked smart guy. He's probably one of the smartest people in the industry that people haven't met before. And because he was behind the scenes, but, he cared for the yeast culture, and excellent beer maker, just super talented skill set. But if you look at between Kevin and Chris and me and Nathan Osborne, who's our director of sales, and several others, there's about between 5 or 6 of us. We've got about, 75 years of experience, maybe. So we're a new company. We've only been around a couple of years, but it's certainly not our first rodeo either.
Right. Yeah.
So, yep.
It's a great story. And it's funny you mentioned Kevin, because I actually got the chance to meet him about a month or so ago. He was here in town, or actually several months ago.
At the Beam Institute?
Yeah. A friend of mine invited me to come out to dinner and just hang out with her and some friends the night before. And Kevin was one of the friends. And just kind of getting to talk to him. And I was just like, holy crap, dude. This guy's like on a whole nother level, man. Very, very impressive.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And, I had the good fortune of working with Kevin at Jack Daniel's for 20 years. And, I would have in my mind things I wanted to do, but, Kevin, from a science standpoint, from just the nuts and bolts and the details, he's one of the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He knows how to keep systems clean. like I said, excellent beer maker, knows how to condition yeast cultures to get peak performance. So there are a lot of things I wanted to accomplish and come into company that are going to be a hell of a lot easier, simply because Kevin said, that sounds like fun. I'm in. Let's do it. So
yeah,
I'm very grateful that he believed in me, believed in this company, and came along.
yeah, that's awesome. He started talking about like higher yield from your grains and really tapping into that. And man, I was just sitting there at the table at dinner, just like, just unbelievable, man, the level of knowledge. So I didn't get to go to the Beam Institute. I'm sorry I missed that, but hopefully one of these days I get the chance to do that. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like you got a great group of people around you. There's no question about it, man. And people understand, obviously, you get a great gig, but at the same time, there's a itch that some people just have, that you feel like, I need to do something for myself. Even though maybe I love what I do, but there's something else out there. Right. So definitely. So Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey, and talk about, one thing I wanted to ask you, also about this, Jeff. I noticed this bottle obviously was different than the other two bottles. So what's the story behind the difference in the bottles?
So that bottle is going to be our flagship line. Okay. So the round bottles that I sent you are meant to be sort of like a limited time release offering. Let's throw it out. Yeah, that sort of Weller style bottle right there. Yeah, that we did on the Tennessee 3-wood, and we also did on the Seismic Rye. Yep. Were just bottles that we had. Glassware, was difficult to get and expensive. So I'm like, I might as well use them. So I'm using it as sort of a test structure, I would call it. So I did the rye single barrel at 107 proof in it and put it out there in that bottle. Actually, a lot of people love that bottle. Yeah. So what I have thought is, by this fall, I will have the Tennessee apple wood finish, and I'll have the rye cherry wood finish in the bottle. That's the maple bourbon.
Oh, okay.
So that rectangular bottle.
It'll be in this style. Okay.
So yeah, the colors that you see used on the two round bottles, that sort of burgundyish red and the green, are going to be translated over. So there will be a sort of a burgundy, blue, and green version of the company bottle that have basically a Tennessee whiskey, a bourbon, and a rye with an apple, a maple, and a cherry. So 3 different distinct American whiskeys that have 3 different wood finishes done to them.
I gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
And what I'm thinking about with that round bottle, I still like that bottle. Mm-hmm. Is I'm thinking about sort of making it a single barrel, one-off custom blend type run for people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do it in that structure so that people will see that it's different.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yep. Matt, let's jump back to the whiskey. Let's talk about this the straight bourbon here. That's age stated at a minimum 3 years, but it's actually much older.
Yeah, it's between 5 and 6. I think the youngest barrel in that batch was 5. Yeah. And then I had barrels that were peaking right at almost at 6 this round.
That's crazy. Matt, what do you think in terms of the palate and the finish on this one?
Hey, under promise and over deliver, right? It's got a really the palate to me is like cinnamon raisin bread, like toasted cinnamon raisin bread is really what I'm picking up. I think that raisin that I had on the nose is coming through with that richness, that like really savory sweet on the palate. And then the wheat in it definitely plays that toasted bread, kind of baguette-y type flavor on there. I think the maple does a good job of really sweetening things up and giving it some depth and adding into that too. But nice, it's got a warm finish. Yeah, nice like cinnamon and just some nice like warmth coming down the line there on the back of the palate as it finishes. Yeah, and really, really done really well.
Matt, the finish, it's kind of funny because I know we've had some rye whiskeys that have a higher rye content that almost have almost like a jalapeno, almost like a peppery type of finish to it. And even though this is a wheater at a blend of 3 different wheats, to me, the finish on it has almost that kind of like a peppery, a warm, not black pepper, but almost like a warm pepper, not quite like a jalapeno, but just a nice consistent heat to it. And then you combine it with that maple, so it's almost like a maple heat. It's a really, really nice finish on there. I really, really like this one.
Yeah, so I submitted it for judging last year and I got a platinum award for it. Okay. And And the same year Weller got gold. So the Weller 12 and 107. So, and it's certainly, I would never put that brand down at all. I mean, that's always going to be in the eye of the judge. But I've told people, if you just are into weeded bourbons and you're struggling to find that, just know that in a blind tasting, the judges really like this company bourbon. It's weeder too. It's no rye in it.
Yeah.
So it's a nice alternative. If it's not simply about impressing your friends that you found a bottle, that was on allocation, I just lucked up on one. But yeah, I felt really good about it. Actually, that last year, the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel and Single Barrel Rye were gold. And I always thought that those were two of Jack Daniel's better products in the lineup, and just the judges didn't obviously care for them. Gold's not bad. It's just, when they're offering double platinums and platinums, you would prefer one of those, right? Who wants to be bronze if you can be gold or silver, right?
Yeah, no, exactly right.
But no, I felt good about that. And I've used the Ascots, and it's simply because I've kind of seen that a lot of your awards, if they're run by magazines, there seems to be some bias between, around people who buy a lot of ad space, and you just wonder if that's playing into their decisions at all. And I like the Ascots because I know they part the samples out. They go in, spec sheet goes out with it.
Yep.
But judges don't really know anything other than, basic age and proof and anatomy of it. And then they just call balls and strikes. And, as a distiller, that's what you're hoping to get, is just an objective opinion on it. And, but I noticed that at the Ascots, they tend to like high proofs. They like old, they like high rye. So, those judges seem to be biased. They're probably more mature palate.
Yeah.
And
right.
as I've gotten older, I prefer that too, the higher proof stuff. But I would say they value one impressive sip, maybe over sessionability. So, that 90 proof bourbon is meant to, have 2 or 3 glasses of it a night.
Yeah.
The first sip. And, if that's the only sip you're going to get, may not overly impress you, but the cast strength did. And the Seismic Rye, I sent those in this year. Those are both double platinum, which is as high as they offer. So I at least kind of read that. I read that group of judges, I think, pretty well last year, and said, if I'm going to go back to the Ascots, I need to go with a slightly higher proof and go with something that I think is going to have a little bit of a wow factor off of a single sip, because that's probably all they're going to be able to do. They're doing so many different spirits. They're having to do a sip here, a sip here, a sip here. And that one sip's all you've got to impress them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very, very good point. I actually talked to one of the judges last week about the judging process and how that all works. And that's what he said exactly. He gets a sheet, he gets all these samples, and he has so many days that he can work through those samples, and he has no idea what they are. Other than, he gets if it's a high proof.
Yeah, I think they're given the month of April to go through all the samples. And so you have to have them in by the end of March. They judge all through April, and then they combine the judges' score sheets and let you know in May.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really cool process what Fred's doing there with the Ascot Awards. So, we really like what he's doing with that. It's very cool. So guys, we're at the end of round 2 here. So why don't we take a quick break? We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Jeff Arnett, Master Distiller and founder with Company Distilling, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me still here live in the Bourbon Life studios, it's my good rye drinking buddy tonight, Matt. Matt, how you doing, bud?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. Just like our listeners, I've made it this far. I am not going to miss the exciting conclusion of the Bourbon Life Podcast. But how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. This has been a lot of fun so far. I'm looking forward to this third round. Again, like I said, this is an episode I've been wanting to do for a long time, and just really excited to finally make this happen, man. So just a good time so far. Some really good whiskeys, and really looking forward. Matt, I know you're dialed up for this third round, because we're going to move into something that you're a big fan of. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But before we do that, I want to thank all of our sponsors again for everything they do for us. We appreciate their support, appreciate them sticking with us, and we couldn't do what we do without their help. So we really appreciate all of them. And Matt, with that said, though, you want to tell everybody who we have with us tonight?
Absolutely. Back for round number 3 is Jeff Arnett, the Master Distiller and founder at Company Distilling. Jeff, welcome back for the final segment of the Bourbon Life Podcast.
All right, let's do it, guys.
That's right.
Around in third base, headed to home.
That's right.
That's right.
We're ready to do this. So we got something poured up this round. Would you like to tell everybody, like I said, everybody that knows Matt and listens to the show knows what his favorite is. You want to tell everybody what we're drinking this round?
Yep. So this is one that I call the Seismic Rye Single Barrel.
Nice.
For people who've not been to Townsend before, we have a small distillery there. We do all of our wood finishing of our brown spirits there. We make beer there. So we have like a brew distillery that's right on the Little River, 7-8 acre campus. A beautiful spot, only about a mile outside the Great Smoky Mountains National Park entrance going to Cades Cove, which is your best place to see deer and turkey and bear in the wild. But one of the things I thought was cool as we were looking at doing our rye product is one of the sort of things that's like, go to Rock City or see Ruby Falls. You see all these old signs, or people have, gone on vacation to all these, places over the years. And the place that's in Townsend that kind of has that type of history is the Tuckaleechee Cavern. So today you have grandparents taking their grandkids in there because when they, because their grandparents took them in there. So this is sort of a multi-generation just natural, underground cavern type system. Of course, Kentucky is blessed to have some really nice one of those too to explore. But there is one in Townsend called Tuckaleechee Cavern. And when they dated the Smoky Mountains, they're not the tallest. They're only 6,000-7,000 feet above sea level. But they're the oldest when they date the rock that's up in the Smoky Mountains. So in being old, they also have a really good attachment to the Earth's mantle. So we're not, we're a long way from West Coast where you think about earthquakes, but there's actually, that's the San Andreas Fault, but the New Madrid Fault runs out of Missouri into sort of the northwest corner of Tennessee. So they monitor seismic activity for the eastern half of the United States out of the Tuckaleechee Cavern. So federal government back in 1978 set up a monitoring station in there, and they put numbers on all of those stations, and they called that one AS-107. So American Seismic Station 107. So I was like, boom, I'm going to call it Seismic Rye, and I'm going to go at 107 proof, because us coming out with our first rye product might not be earth shaking, but we hope that the first sip's going to rock your world. So it was just something fun. Most of these bottles are sold in Townsend or in Thompson Station or other distilleries in Middle Tennessee. But, if you pick up the bottle in Townsend, you're just 5 minutes away from the cavern. We encourage people, get the bottle, go to the cavern, kind of visit the place that, the bottle is named after. But I was really proud of this product. It went to the Ascots this year. It won double platinum.
Wow. Okay.
It's a 100% rye product. So it's a 95% rye, but a 5% malted rye.
Okay.
And I used the cherry wood on it. I think I was talking earlier with you guys that, not every wood works on every grain, but what I noticed in particular is that the higher the rye content, the more cherry seemed to be the complementary wood to finish it. And the real benefit of it is just taking the heat off. It has a unique wrinkle of character. But what I liked about this rye is it was not your signature black pepper sort of raw. I think there's a rawness about a lot of ryes. It's what people like about them. They make great cocktails because you can kind of put sweeteners and bitters in them and kind of tame them a little bit. But if you're looking for one that's just a sipping smooth but high proof one, I think those are fewer and far between in the rye space because a lot of them tend to be a little bit harsh.
Yep.
If I'm being honest, I like this one because it was more of a mint. It was more of a mint and licorice character on it. And I was the kid that left the black jelly beans in the bag and threw them away. So I was never the person who really cared for that. I never, did the Jägermeister shots or anything like that. I thought those were gross. But it's very subtle in this, but it's nice at the same time. When I first got this liquid, I was like, yep, it's great, but it's got a lot of heat on the backside, especially 107 proof. I dropped the cherry wood down on it and it just completely diffused all the heat off of it. So it's warm as 107 proof should be, but I think surprisingly smooth at the same time.
Yeah. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one?
It was quite warm when I think I went in a little hard and heavy on the nose at first and took one to the nostrils real quick, but it's since come down and I'm able to pick out a little bit more of the characteristics on it. But I pick up like crusted rye bread or like a pie dough, pie crust type aroma first. And then the mint that you were talking about, Jeff, is definitely there. There's an herbal mint,
Mhm.
kind of like almost like lemongrass or like a lemon thyme,
Yeah.
lemon balm type aroma. And I pick up like subtle fruitiness with this. It's certainly not like fruity like we had in the first round with the Tennessee 3-wood, where there was like overwhelming amounts of orchard fruit and it was really distinct. But this has just like a kind of a nondescript fruit flavor to it that like it's somewhere between like a orchard fruit and like a berry type flavor. Just really nice though, but really complex, nice, and like you were saying, not black pepper. It's not old, hot, and spicy. It's got a lot of flavor to it. A lot to take in here.
Yeah, definitely, Matt. Going back to that, the fruitiness, and I know this has got the finish with cherry wood, but it's still it comes across almost with a cherry type of flavor aroma on the nose to me, Matt. You're talking about that fruitiness, a berry. I mean, somewhere in between the berry and a cherry. For me, I also get a little bit of like the wood, and I don't know if it's the maple or the oak, but I can kind of pick up just a little bit of woodsiness to it. Not overwhelming at all. The mint, like you said, comes through, but I also get almost like a kind of like a brown sugary sweetness that comes on this as well for me. So yeah, it's almost dessert like. When I'm sipping this, and you don't think of a 95.5 rye as being described as, something that's dessert like, but this one definitely has those types of qualities that would make this a great, after dinner sipper to sit around and enjoy, with almost like a dessert type of quality to it.
Yeah, I was really pleased with this one because, as I was saying earlier, I had, even though I was the one who did the malt whiskey at Jack Daniel's, I'll be honest with you, they had to twist my arm to do it. I did not really care for the American single malt at Jack Daniel's. It's part of the triple mash. There's a reason why it's not being, standalone. It's going into sherry butts and things of that nature. And that is, I got an appreciation for why they smoke in peat malted barley, and that is because if there's, I don't really care for smoke or peat, but if there's one thing more obnoxious than that, it's the inherent character of malted barley when there's nothing else there to hide it. It has sort of a wet hay, a grassy note,
It does.
that sort of husky type of character. And if you do a wort or wash style of fermentation and distillation, as they do in Scotland, you can remove a lot of that. But at Jack Daniel's, it wasn't designed to do that. It was solids and everything through the still.
Oh, right.
Even though you were only in there for 5 or 6 minutes, you got them hot enough that it kind of put that character into the distillate. So, that twice barreled stuff that came from Jack Daniel's, I got one of the earliest samples of it when it was coming through single barrel. Somebody sent it to me and said, I think you'd be curious to know, here's your sample of it. And it had gotten better, clearly. But that distillate was pretty raw and grassy, and it wasn't pleasant to me.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, it was, I thought the Jack Daniel's rye, from the time it came off the still, I'm like, this is going to be fine. Old number 7 was never a problem. But the malt worried me, because we really made a lot of it, without having a market study done. It was just like, the Jack Daniel's name will carry it, make it. And I just like, uh-oh. So I don't really plan to do anything in the malt space, needless to say, because that's just, I'm being honest. I don't really care. So I know the American malt category, people are kind of clapping and glad that the laws are being written for it and everything. And I think clearly if they're going to be some, there need to be some standards for it. That I applaud them at least trying to get their arms around it and to give it some definition. But I recognize the 3 forms of American whiskey to be pretty much bourbon, rye, and I'll throw Tennessee whiskey in there as sort of a variant of bourbon. But malt whiskey, I'm going to give it to the Scots. I mean, that's their thing. So anything here is just an American form of Scotch, really. It's just, that's, to me, that's their grain. That's their character. And I'm fine to have the other 3.
Yeah. I'm trying to develop an appreciation for Scotch. I own 2 whole bottles out of the 600 that I have here in my house, Jeff. And I'm struggling to do that. And if you throw in the peat and the smoke, then you've completely lost me. But I agree, man. I struggle with that, just with the regular malted barley, just by itself without smoke or peat to it. I struggle with that, especially after being a big bourbon and rye drinker for so long now.
Well, I can remember when we were talking about it at Jack Daniel's, and they brought in some examples of some that were being made from small distilleries across the U.S., and I tasted them all, and I'm like, no, remind me why we want to do this again. I mean, these are terrible. You know, I feel like I'm licking an ashtray here.
Oh.
I'd burp them up the next day. So it wasn't like it was just bad in the moment. It was bad for days.
Yeah,
you know?
no, I get it.
Just didn't like them.
People say it's an acquired taste, and I don't know if it's if it's a taste that I want to acquire. I'm working on it, maybe a little.
Yeah, I would tell you this. You know, I felt like Jack Daniel's from time to time would tell me to go get a competitive set of bottles, and they would tell me which brands they wanted me to get, and just taste them, prepare some tasting notes, maybe talk pros and cons. You know, if we were going to go into a bar and these brands are competing with Single Barrel, they're competing with Gentleman Jack. What would you say are the pros or cons of these brands versus our brand? And how should we talk about it? So I would try to help them do that from time to time. But and I wouldn't be the type to go and buy Scotch, but they told me to go get a Macallan 12, that Spanish sherry cask.
Right.
And I thought it was good. At the time, I think I paid $72 for one of them at a time that Jack Daniel's Single Barrel was maybe $45.
Right.
So I was surprised it was even in the competitive set, because to me that's not the same buyer. That somebody that's shopping at $45 is probably not necessarily a $72 buyer.
Yeah.
But I thought it was good. It was actually the only thing that was in the tasting that I thought was anywhere near as complex or as good as the Single Barrel was at the time. So I said, we're value priced to the only one in that set that I think is even in the same realm.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense to me. So Jeff, let's talk. We talked about, you've got the location there at Thompson Station, right? That's outside of Nashville. Is that right?
That's true. So, when I left Jack Daniel's, it wasn't to create just a Jack Daniel's brand. I really wanted to create a portfolio of spirits. And doing so, we talked about having different locations and creating houses of expertise, we called it.
Okay.
So Townsend, all we have is electricity and a septic tank there. We like the location just because of its beauty, but we had to design it to basically not have any infrastructure. So we have a 1,000-gallon waste tank in the ground just in case something happens there that's not septic safe. But, there's no natural gas, there's no municipal sewer. So what we do there will have to be well thought out. We can't do anything super complicated there because there's not enough infrastructure for it. But we're making beer there. We can do flavored spirits there. So we can do wood finishing and bottling and things of that nature. So we can do some of the manufacturing steps there that we need to do. We found a 31-acre property back near Knoxville's airport. It's part of Springbrook Farm. It was part of the old Alcoa campus. So the Alcoa company has changed hands now, called Arconic. But the town of Alcoa is, of course, named after the Aluminum Company of America. They came in and built all of the housing and, built the whole town. That's where I live now, is actually in Alcoa on the southern end of the Knoxville airport. But right across the Alcoa highway from me is a very undisturbed old brick plant, had 30,000 square feet under roof. We've laid it out with an architect. We can fit about 10,000 barrels in it. And there's a building that's adjacent to it right now, a 2-story brick building that really looks like it has been plucked off the Jack Daniel's campus in Lynchburg. It was built in 1940. Jack Daniel's was built in the late 1930s, but it's 2-story brick, iron frame windows, big ventilation fans on the roof, and it looks like it was in the hollow. So every time I've looked at that building, I could see a steel coming out of poking a hole in the roof and just running the steel out the top of it. So we have been talking to the gentleman who owns the building and are trying to acquire it. I think we've finally working out an agreement to move him. He doesn't want to shut his business down, which is certainly understood. So we're trying to find him a new home where we can get him, where he can keep his business running, and we can acquire that property. That would save us from having to build a new building for the distillery.
Right.
And of course, I don't have to tell you, construction is super expensive right now. We saw that in building the small distillery in Townsend. It really, created a new high water mark in my head of what a price per square foot could be.
Yeah.
We bore through it, but on the order of magnitude of what we're going to do in Alcoa, we really need to be patient just to not spend that much money. I mean, we spent like $600 a square foot or something to build Townsend. It's just nuts.
Yeah. Wow.
But we also have a small distillery over in Thompson Station. So for people who are familiar with the Nashville area, you go south through Brentwood and Franklin, and then just south of Franklin is Thompson Station. So it's in Williamson County, great location, right across the street from the old depot. So the town is called Thompson Station, but the building across the street from the distillery says Thompson because it is the station.
Oh.
So imagine that. It just says Thompson. But the railroad tracks come past the distillery and then go past the old depot building, and they bend off through the trees. And the most notable product that Heath had made there in the past was his gin. He won the category at the Ascots in 21 for best gin. But it was in a bottle that was probably not indicative of the quality to compete in the gin space in particular nationally. So we just kind of re-envisioned the bottle, the label, the name, called it Ghost Rail.
Okay.
So we're doing every drop of Ghost Rail off a small 100-gallon alembic still. It makes for a great gin. Only has 6 botanicals in it, but perfectly balanced and 88 proof. I think is still an award winner. I've never cared. You were talking about, I don't really care for malt whiskey. I've never been a big gin person either, but this is one that I can literally just sit and sip.
Okay.
It's just, it's that good. Not bitter, not dry. I don't feel like I've swallowed a pine cone or cleaned a toilet. So, to me, if I'm drinking gin and I don't feel like I've just come out of a clean restroom, then that's a win.
Oh yeah.
But the Ghost Rail is fantastic. And we took the imagery of the railroad tracks kind of coming past the still and disappearing off into, who knows where.
Yeah.
Or to say, these Ghost Rails or, these old abandoned train tracks kind of mark our history and where we've been, but they'll leave where we're going up to each of us. It's time for you to sit down and contemplate that and decide what you're going to do. I mean, that's sort of part of my story. The pandemic gave me a moment's pause. I, hamster on a wheel, running and running and running. And then all of a sudden you're off.
Right.
And then you see yourself, maybe for the first time accurately in a while. And you realize that, am I going to get, I'm going to do all the things that I want to do in my life if I keep doing this, or do I need to do something different? And I think the pandemic actually helped me make that decision. And a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm not the only one. A lot of people have made career changes through the pandemic because I think it gave them a moment to think.
Yeah.
And the gin is about that. It's about, history is what it is, but your future's up to you. So just think about it and be deliberate in it. That's moving forward.
That's great advice, man. Definitely great advice. Now, Jeff, let's talk about, you kind of alluded to it. You talked about, especially with the straight bourbon, the barrels, you're sourcing that. So everything we're drinking tonight is sourced whiskey. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And then the intention is once Alcoa gets up, you guys will be distilling your own and laying down your own product. Is that kind of the goal?
It is. And I didn't waste much time. We're in a new make contract. It's still not something we're distilling because I'm going to need at least a 24-inch Vendome column to keep up with my aspirations. So it's going to take me a while to get that done. If I push that 24/7, that's 1 million gallons of distillate a year.
Wow.
That I could produce on that. So very, very similar in size and scale to Rabbit Hole.
Okay. All right.
If you've got 9 8,000 gallon fermenters and a 24-inch Vendome column, and you run that at capacity, you can produce about 1 million gallons a year.
Wow. Okay.
So that's what I have scoped for myself. That would be a 350,000 case 9-liter brand. I don't have aspirations of being 15, 20 million cases like Jack Daniel's was. It'd be great if that happened, but that's not what success is for me. I just want to be proud of what we do and have the freedom to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to me, we're a long way from pushing 1 million gallon still even, but that's what my aspirations are right now. That we're going to get the Alcoa property hopefully under construction this year, clean up the brick plant, get it where we can move the barrels into it. So we'll bring our barrels home. So that facility will hold 10,000 barrels. We've got about a third of those already.
Okay.
That have been made under a new make contract. That'll be our 4-grain.
Okay.
So that will be the liquid that we bring to Alcoa first. But I have the intention of doing the rye and the Tennessee whiskey there as well.
Okay. All right.
So we'll do all 3 grain bills.
Wow. That's very good. Good to know, man. Very cool. Matt, let's jump back over here to the whiskey, to the Seismic Rye. Let's talk about the palate and the finish on this one. What are you picking up?
Right on the front of the palate, I get some heat from like a peppermint type aroma, kind of that like really cooling heat, almost like menthol, but really nice flavored peppermint to me right up front, like great rye characteristics. Then it leads into some of those herbal flavors that we love so much. That mint comes back a little bit of the time, just like the nice grassy herbal flavors that we all have really come to enjoy, or that I really enjoy out of a rye whiskey. Then the cherries there's like a black cherry, like a really dark cherry sweetness that comes kind of through as it's moving down the palate. And then a nice, long, warm finish. Wouldn't guess this is 107 proof. I think it drinks really well.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. You know, like I said, to me, I got cherry on the nose and on the palate. That definitely comes through. But I do like that rye spice that hits you up front. Not overwhelming, but it is that nice spice. It lets you know it's a rye, but then you get that sweetness that combines with that cherry. And I still, you know, I talked about a little brown sugar on the nose. It's still that sweetness to me translates on the palate, almost like a brown sugar or some type of burnt sugar. And combined with that cherry, again, it's almost like dessert-like a cherry cobbler or cherry crumble, where you get the brown sugar on top of a cherry, a baked warm cherry pie or something. Very nice, definitely.
One of the things that, and there were things that we did at Jack Daniel's that I liked more than others, you know, some less than others. But what I learned is that you won't go broke betting on sweet. You know, yeah,
that's a great point. It really is.
Yep.
You know, people are going to enjoy that.
Yeah, if you're going to bet anywhere, I became friends with Guy Fieri through Jack Daniel's barbecues. He's part of the Motley Q. His team competed there several times. He was the celebrity judge or pit master one year. Went to his 55th birthday party earlier this year and watched Sammy Hagar sing "I Can't Drive 55" to him. That was pretty fun. But you know, Guy told me, he said, you know, when it came to the barbecue thing, he said, we know exactly who we are, and we always go really sweet. He said, you know, he said, you go big or you go home, but you can't be in the middle of the road here. So they went sweet on everything they did in every category, whether it was chicken, pork, whatever. And he said, if we end up on the right table, we'll win it all. If we end up on the wrong table, we'll be last.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to find the right table, the one who wants all the sweet stuff. But if you get there, you'll impress them more than anybody else. So just know who you are, stay in your lane and do it. Go big or go home.
Yeah.
But he bet on sweet. That was what he told me. That was their strategy.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. And this one is sweet. This one comes across sweet. I love it.
Yeah.
Like I said, almost dessert-like. A great drinker at 107. So easy to drink. Not like Matt said, it does not come across it as a 107 at all.
Yeah. To me, it comes across as like a warmer, bolder Angel's Envy rye that's finished in the rum cask.
Oh yeah.
Certainly not as sweet. Like that is almost like overly sweet.
Yeah.
But this, I think, shares a lot of the characteristics that I get with that, like sweetness, but a little bit more pronounced heat and herbal flavors as well. But drinks in the same vein. Really, really, really nice.
I liked it so much, I just poured myself a second glass. It's very good. So, Jeff, we're almost at the end of round 3 here in the end of the show. But before we wrap it up, I wanted to ask you a question. What has been so far on your journey? What's been the favorite part for you, or do you have something that's been your favorite part of this journey?
Wow. You know, I would just say in this, even though, you know, there was a time that I could pick up the phone and say, I need samples, and I'd have 1,000 on my desk by the end of the week. And I wouldn't have to lift a finger other than picking up the phone. Now, if I want 1,000 samples, I better get busy because I'm going to have to go get them. So, you know, but I think if anything, I've enjoyed that, as, you know, to be designing something, but really not putting your hands on it quite so much. I mean, when it comes to preparing the wood and doing the wood finishing, I do it myself.
Okay.
And I draw the samples off myself, and I build all the models myself. And basically, you know, doing all of this sort of bootstrap process. But I'm enjoying that. You know, like I said, at Jack Daniel's, I didn't know how to run a distillery in its entirety.
Yeah.
You know, when I came to Jack Daniel's, it was already, you know, hundreds of people, and you had all these role players. So you came in, I was quality control manager, so I knew all the quality things, but I didn't necessarily know anything to do with the TTB or any of our legal filings or any of those things that kind of fall to us now. So I feel like I have a much better full scale understanding of the industry and what it takes to run a distillery now, even though I don't have the scale anymore.
Yeah.
But I welcome that. I actually enjoy the challenges of it. Love being hands-on. I look forward to the day that, some of these things I can kind of pass them off and start training someone who, whether it be my kids or, some of our employees' kids, to run this for us someday. So I'm kind of looking forward to passing this to a new generation. But I never assumed that this was going to be some get rich quick scheme.
Right.
I knew when I did this that I was going to spend at least the next 10 or 15 years before I would even consider hanging it up. And I'm just a couple of years into that right now. So I'm enjoying the challenge. I love being able to design the whiskey without anybody telling me no. Because everything at Jack Daniel's was a negotiation, as you would that it would be. I mean, it's a massive corporation. So there were plenty of things. I got to do a lot of things, but there were plenty of things I would have loved to have done that I didn't even ask because I knew what the answer was going to be.
Right.
So now I just have a couple of people I can talk to. I can sit down in their office and say, this is what I want to do. And they're like, hit it. Let's go. The sky's the limit.
Jeff, it's funny because I was listening to a podcast that you had done with someone. I can't remember how long ago it was, but they said that they had been talking to someone in Tennessee that was pretty big in the industry. And that person had said that they had not seen you like this happy in a long time. And I just thought that was really cool because people think, starting your own business and doing your own thing, it's stressful. I mean, there's no question about it. Yeah. But at the same time, you're doing your own thing, right? So I just think that's really cool. So, I mean, is that pretty accurate? Do you feel like you're happy you're doing this now, or?
Well, and I probably know who told you that because the first time I saw her after I left Jack Daniel's, she said, "You look like the weight of the world's been lifted off your shoulders. That you look happy and you look more comfortable than you did the last time I saw you when you were still with Jack Daniel's." And and there was a level of discomfort that came with being the face and a voice of a brand.
Sure.
That was I had the people of Lynchburg counting on me. I didn't want to disappoint them. They had entrusted a lot to me. It's a very divisive world that we live in, needless to say. And of course, I would never get up on stage and talk religion or politics or these things that are going to be 50-50, maybe at best. And no matter what you say, somebody's going to get their feelings hurt.
Right.
But still, I mean, we're living in a increasingly offended world, and you don't have to do anything. You can just look sideways and somebody's offended anymore. And you felt the weight of that. I mean, who wants to be up on stage talking for a brand, just waiting for somebody to go off?
Yeah, right.
And I would love to say that, we say, gather around good company and stuff like that. We want to be a brand that encourages people to have community, to get back to remembering that, if you're American, there's more things we have in common than we have different. Don't listen to the politicians. They get power from dividing us. Just, think about the blessings that we have to be here. But, even saying that from stage right now, somebody would say, "Oh, you're, warmonger," or whatever the hell you are. But yeah, I would just say I felt more and more pressure from that because it seems like the world is becoming increasingly divisive. And I always felt like, I would just say this: I did not get a ton of talking points from people at Jack Daniel's. But if ever I said anything that maybe they didn't quite like, I'd hear plenty about it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm like, and then you just finally get to that point where I've done this job for, 10, 12 years now. You can basically either give me talking points or shut up. That's kind of how I feel. Either put some skin in the game or you get up there.
Right.
I'll hand you the microphone and you go and talk.
Yeah.
And I'll just sit out there and be offended like everybody else is, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's tough.
But that was just the part of, that was the part of the job that most people would say, "Oh, Master Distiller Jack Daniel's is the greatest thing on the planet." I got to do some wonderful things. And the people of Lynchburg were wonderful to me. I will be forever grateful for the support that I got from them. But that job was not all puppies and rainbows. I'm telling you, there were moments you were like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah.
You get thrown to the wolves at times.
Yeah. I can't even imagine.
But I did my best, and I loved the brand, and I always did my best to represent it in a way that I thought would bring honor to the people of Lynchburg who gave blood, sweat, and tears for it. That was always my first concern, is that they got credit for all the hard work that they did, even if people, in Louisville might not have liked the words that I chose or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did my best,
Yeah.
and I don't have no second guessing or regrets about it.
Well, that's great. And that's a great place to be. You lived that life, you had the experience, and now you're doing what you want to do for yourself, which is great. So Jeff, real quick, what does the future look like for you and for Company Distilling?
So we are the two bottles that you were trying tonight that were in the round bottles are going to go into the company bottle. So I used that round bottle simply because we had it to do a limited time offer just to test the market and see how people responded to it. So I'm quickly moving to get bottles decorated and labels made so that there will be basically a 3-bottle set from company and that sort of signature bourbon bottle that we have now. And then distribution. So I was trying not to outkick my coverage. I did not choose the usual liquid. I think a lot of people, I'm a sourced product, but when people taste it, they're like, it's not the stuff I've tasted from other sourced brands. Right. It's very different. That was very deliberate on my part. So I had to go, turn over a few rocks and go to different states that people weren't expecting to find liquids to do what we did. And I didn't want to I'd rather protect quality than to just put a quantity out there that's just, what everybody else is doing. I felt like whether I put that pressure on myself, I just felt like the expectation was a little bit higher if I was leaving Jack Daniel's, that I wasn't just going to go get, 21% rye MGP and put my name on it, throw it out there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people do that. It's very common, in a lot of brands out there. And I'm like, I can't do that. If I do that, I'm done. But I'm ready for distribution now because I'm flowing into the 4 grain. I'm very close to the liquid that, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. So we're in 5 states now. We're hoping to be in at least 6 by the end of this year, but starting next fall, we'll go and we're going to start opening it up.
Okay, great. That was going to be the next question. The final question was, where can people find your products? And
we are currently distributed in Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado.
Okay.
And through Sealbox online, there's another 17 or 18 states that you can have delivered to your home. And they actually at Sealbox, they have the Tennessee 3 wood, they have the Seismic Rye, they have our bourbon, and even have our gin.
Okay.
So and Sealbox been very good to us.
Yeah.
We've had a couple people cover that we were sold there, and when those stories run, like on Yahoo News, have them sell 2 or 3 pallets in a weekend.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are on social media, Instagram, you've got the website as well.
Yep. We are.
Yeah. So people can find more information there. So Jeff, we really appreciate you joining us tonight, man. This has been a lot of fun. I'm sorry.
For me as well. I appreciate the time and opportunity to talk about what we're doing here.
Anything you want to add before we wrap it up and send it home tonight?
Only that, if people are passing through Tennessee, we'd love to see you. Our facilities are not large, and hopefully we'll have our largest facility done in the next year to 18 months. That'll be the Alcoa property. But if people are passing through Nashville or the East Tennessee, Great Smoky Mountains area, our distilleries are there. We do tours, tastings, have bottle sales. Beautiful, very quaint spot there in Townsend, but I think they're in Thompson Station, but Townsend, beautiful location.
Yep.
If people have not been to Townsend and they've been to the Smoky Mountains a lot, very different than Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge. They call it the peaceful side for a reason. It's a different pace of life. Normally, as I've driven into work, I can kind of feel my blood pressure kind of ramping up as you kind of know the pressure of going into the office or whatever is going to hit you. When I drive from Alcoa to Townsend, I think my blood pressure is dropping, even though that's going to work for me. It's a different pace of life there.
Yeah.
And I think, being in my mid 50s now, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
That I kind of feel so settled and comfortable with what we're doing. And it's nice to just be able to shake hands and greet people. At Jack Daniel's, it was very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
With all the job responsibilities that I had, but I can literally just sit at the distillery in Townsend and, sign bottles for people and show them around. And yeah, it's been fun.
Awesome. That's great.
Yep.
Matt, anything final before we wrap it up here, bud?
Hey, Jeff, thanks for taking the time with us tonight and sharing what you all have been doing. This is a really great portfolio you're starting out with. I'm nothing but excited to see what all you're going to be doing in the future and to keep seeing your products as they hopefully pop up all over the place. And if you ever need help pulling those 1,000 samples, let me know.
Yeah, I've got the old hand like brace and bit drill. Get like carpal tunnel syndrome, tennis elbow. So.
Oh man. All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, man. This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. Great to get to sit down with you. Like I said, I enjoyed getting to meet you, even if it was briefly at Grains and Grits. Look forward, hopefully, to coming back down, depending on if John Edwards hooks me up and invites me again.
He's a mess.
Man, I'm hoping I can.
Yeah, John's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a great dude, man. I absolutely love John to death. Just a great guy with Dad's Drinking Bourbon. So we appreciate him, and but I appreciate him always hooking me up to get me to Grains and Grits, man. So hopefully, and like I said, I'm going to be down there this weekend, so maybe I'm going to run over there because my dad is the guy that gets up. He's like, we got to get to Cades Cove, right when it opens, because
you got to go early.
It's the only time you see the bears.
You can't wait till the heat of the day. Wildlife tends to move when it's cool, in the cool of the morning.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. That's my dad. He's 80. He's almost 80 years old, man. But it's like he'll be up at 6:30. Like, come on, let's go. We're going to go to Cades Cove. So
I would tell you to come and see me at the distillery. But we normally do a family reunion over the 4th of July. But this year we've had to move it forward. So I'm headed to New Johnsonville, Tennessee.
I got you.
Sort of on near the Land Between the Lakes.
Yeah.
Sort of Lake Barkley, Kentucky Lake area.
Yeah. Gotcha.
To see my cousins, aunts, uncles, and all their children and everything. And my dad is approaching 86 now.
Okay.
But he'll be there this weekend. And I don't get to see him near as much now that we've moved east.
Yeah.
It's been one of the downsides of moving this far away from him, but
yeah,
I should be able to see him this weekend.
Well, I hope you guys have a great time. And like I said, we may still stop by. I'd like to check out the place. I haven't had a chance to do that.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. Haven't had a chance to do that yet. So, but we appreciate you joining us, Jeff. It's been a lot of fun. And we appreciate all of our listeners. Like Matt always says, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you're listening to us, we appreciate you joining us and tuning in. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Thank them for everything that they do for us as well. If you want to reach out to us, you have any suggestions for shows, any questions, please feel free to email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can also get us on Instagram at The Bourbon Life and Facebook as well. Join our private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We'd love to have you in there. We have some fun conversations and things going on. So definitely check that out. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate that. Also, our good friend Big Chief has his show, The Whiskey Trip. That's also part of our umbrella. So if you haven't checked that out, please check out Big Chief and his new podcast called The Whiskey Trip. He's doing some great shows with a lot of craft distilleries, a lot of fun stuff he's got going on there. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.